and welcome. I'm Michelle Anderson, founder of Clarinet Mentors, and today I have a video that will help you to learn some alternate clarinet fingerings that'll make it a lot easier to move quickly around the instrument. Now, this is a fairly basic lesson. I'm going to introduce you to the two most common chromatic fingerings, and I'll explain what that is. Those of you who are more experienced probably already know this, but if you're self-taught or relatively new to the instrument, it's really useful for you to learn what I'm going to show you on today's video. There's a worksheet that goes along with this, and I highly recommend that you take a look at it because it'll give you some concrete examples of little finger workouts that you can do at home to learn this more quickly and really have it feel easy and natural for you in your own clarinet playing. There's a link to a PDF in the write-up just below this YouTube video. It comes from the Clarinet Mentors website, and having that with you would be a great resource. So I use the word chromatic fingerings. That's a common musical term, and basically chromatic means we're moving through the music notes in half steps. So normally if I'm playing my C to a D, we consider that space to be a whole step musically. If I play the note in between those two, which we could either call C sharp or D flat, be the same pitch, that's moving chromatically. There are two fingerings that are really commonly used on the clarinet that many people don't learn unless they've had somebody show them and say, hey, you should learn this, it's a good thing. So that's what we're going to look at today. So on the worksheet, you'll see the first fingering that's listed is an alternate to your F sharp. And that's the F sharp that you find at the bottom of the musical staff that normally we play with our first finger covering this hole. That's the fingering I use 95% of the time or more for F sharp. However, when you have an F sharp beside an F natural, sometimes, especially if we're slurred, moving between those two can be awkward. In fact, a lot of times I'll ask people to just slur quickly between those two notes, and it's very common to get some effect kind of like this. So some of the time I did it really cleanly, but lots of other times, because I didn't get one finger off the hole at exactly the same instant the next finger went on, I got a mess. And I don't want you to have messes in your playing. I want it to feel easy. So here's the fingering that I'd like you to learn. The first few times you try it, just like any new fingering, it's going to feel a little unfamiliar and a little clumsy. But like any other finger pattern, if we repeat it several times, it really quickly shifts to the part of our brain that controls automatic movement, and it will start to feel easy. So easy, in fact, that you'll find yourself automatically going to that fingering whenever you have a piece of music that goes from F to F sharp or F sharp to F. So the fingering is, your F is normal, just your thumb covering the hole. Instead of flipping to F sharp using the traditional fingering, we're going to look at our 4 side keys here. And what we're going to do is with the top finger on our right hand, we're going to press the 2 side keys down. Now, I'm a huge believer in always using the best hand position possible on clarinet. So when you're training yourself something new, this finger's main job is to cover this hole on the right hand. When we're asking it to roll up to hit those 2 side keys, we want to do so in a way that keeps this hand in the best position possible. Because it's possible you'd go from this fingering to another note that has your whole right hand down. So what I think about is if I had a note where I covered this hole and hit those 2 side keys, which I don't believe I've ever played a note like that, I would notice what part of my finger is hitting those keys. I'm going to zoom in close for you here. For me, if I'm thinking of that, it really becomes almost the side of my knuckle. That's the part of the finger I would use to do this. So exercise number 1, it's not even on the worksheet, that you could try is playing your thumb F and just hitting those 2 side keys to get a feel for what this feels like when I'm trying to go back and forth between F and F sharp. So it feels strange first time I tried that fingering, it felt very odd, but it's a very smooth fingering between F and F sharp. Now what you want to do is train your fingers to have this feel normal, usual, and familiar. So the exercises on the worksheet are going to help you to do that. If you look at exercise number 1, it has you move between F natural, our alternate F sharp, there's that little star above the note, that's just to remind you to use the alternate fingering, and then to open G. And it's very common if we're moving up a chromatic pattern that we would continue up to G, which is why I've included it there. So you could take that pattern, you can play it as written, or just simply loop those notes over and over. And that's the first step in kind of getting this pattern feeling really familiar to us. Now, if this really felt unfamiliar to me, I would probably start by doing it very slowly, and as it got more comfortable, I would speed up. So you might start half the speed I just did, and then gradually speed up as you get used to it. The idea is to keep repeating it until you feel like you're not really thinking about it anymore, but that it's almost happening on autopilot. And that's a sign that it's shifting into the autopilot part of our brain. Or some of you know I nickname that lizard brain. It's a really good place to throw in finger patterns and rhythm patterns that we want to have as tools when we play the clarinet. If you look further in line 1, then we simply extend the exercise to also include an E. So we're starting one note lower. E to F, adding those two side keys with the side of my finger to F sharp, to G, and going back down again. And of course, you could easily make this extended exercise by then going down a note, starting on E flat, going up to G sharp, and then eventually playing an entire chromatic scale up and down. So the idea is to create patterns where you're using the F with the chromatic F sharp fingering together until it feels comfortable for you. Now I'd like to introduce you to another really useful and common chromatic fingering. That's written as the second fingering on the worksheet. And this is an alternate fingering for low B natural. So normally we would play that with our left hand down and the middle finger on our right hand. Now what we're going to be doing, again, is having a different fingering. And it's for the same reason. If I were slurring back and forth between B flat and B natural, it's very hard to do that cleanly. Of course, I could practice it and improve it, but if you try this yourself, slurring back and forth, you're going to find that much of the time you end up with an effect kind of like this. So you'll hear those little notes slipping in there that I really don't want to have slipping in there. Blah, 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 blah. So again, we can make that fingering work, but we don't need to because some smart person invented an easier way for us to do it. And you just have to get your fingers used to it so that you can benefit from it. So our low B natural, we're going to finger our B flat in our usual way, which is simply first finger on the right hand and our entire left hand. We're going to skip a finger, and using our third finger, we're going to hit this little key here. Sometimes I hear that called the sliver key, sometimes it's called the fork key. If we add that to a B flat, we have another way of playing low B natural. Very easy to move between those two notes using that key. So if you try that, initially that's a great way to learn it. Just slur back and forth between B flat and B natural. Now, as always, we want to get the patterns so that they feel really familiar and comfortable in our fingers. And the way to do that is to create simple finger patterns that we repeat over and over again. Usually it's 10 or 15 times until it shifts from concentrating on what is that new fingering to, oh, it feels really easy. Once it feels really easy, keep going a few extra times because that really reinforces it into the autopilot part of our brain. So the first exercise on the worksheet has us going from B flat to B natural to C, and then back down to B natural. Often it's coming down that feels strange because we're not used to adding two fingers to play B natural. And again, it's written out on the worksheet as a couple measures long, but you should on your own repeat it until it feels comfortable. I might start slowly and then gradually speed it up. So if I played those three notes, it would look something like this. And I would gradually speed it up as long as I felt comfortable with it until that fingering started to feel familiar and easy. Again, the next step in sort of creating patterns that work for our fingers is to go a little bit further chromatically. So you'll see that the worksheet then has you start on a B flat, to a B, to a C, to a D flat, which we could also call a C sharp, and then back down again. And perhaps if we carried it even further, then you could start on a low A and continue going through. Your goal being to eventually play the whole chromatic scale fluidly and easily with your fingers moving around the instrument using those fingerings. The chromatic scale is one of those patterns that shows up sometimes in little snippets in many pieces of written music. So it's very handy for us to feel that we have it on autopilot. That way it won't slow us down when we're learning a new piece of music. The final fingering written on that sheet is almost identical to the one we just did. So finger-wise, it's going to feel very easy. It's an alternate fingering to the high F sharp that sits at the top of the staff. So normally we play high F, just like a low B flat, except we're using our register key. And we play high F sharp, just like a low B natural, except we have the register key. So exactly the same dilemma. If I used regular fingering, I'm moving these two fingerings and probably getting a little bit of chaos. So again, if I use that fork fingering, it will be much smoother and I won't get an extra note sliding in between. So the written exercise is very similar to the one we did to get used to that fork fingering on the low register. So it's just moving through different finger combinations. I might start with F to F sharp to high G. Now, if you've just done exercise 2 on the sheet where you were working on it in the low register, it's going to feel extremely easy to do it in the high register. But it helps to look at the page so your eyes get used to seeing that F sharp on paper and associating this alternate fingering with that note. Patterns are one of the keys to success as far as finger technique goes. So it's patterns and it's hand position. I have other videos here on the Clarinet Mentors YouTube channel that specifically talk about ways to hold your hands to help your technique. But these 2 patterns I've shown you now are really important for your overall technique. And I really encourage you to take the time in the next week or 2 to review these patterns until they feel easy and comfortable for you. If you've enjoyed today's video, I invite you to join my Clarinet Mentors community. You may already be a member, but if you're not, it's totally free to join. You just go to www.learnclarinetnow.com and sign up for free. If you ever decide it's not a good fit, you can unsign up very, very easily. When you sign up, you'll get from me a newsletter about every 2 weeks that has an educational video like today's. I'll also send out any reviews on great new clarinet gadgets or CDs or music or anything I think would interest you. Along with my newsletter, I will also let you know if there are any special clarinet events that I would like to invite you to. Sometimes I'll interview an expert on a particular aspect of clarinet playing that I want to share with all of my students and all of you in the Clarinet Mentors community, and you can watch for free. Sometimes I have other information that's going to be useful for you, and that's how you find out. So I invite you to join the Clarinet Mentors community. Thank you for watching today's video, and I'll see you on the next video.